Paco was soon up and on his feet. I stayed there, crouched in a corner to witness his first staggering steps. Every 3 hours after that, we would go to the barn to feed him. I found I had to get on to an upturned bucket, otherwise he couldn't suck properly from the bottle. I'd stand up there and wave the bottle at him and call him over to me. After only a couple of days, I didn't need to do that anymore. As soon as I opened the door into the barn, he'd come trotting over, and he'd suck so strongly that it was all I could do to hold on to the bottle. If he couldn't drink the milk down fast enough, he would become impatient with me and start to butt suddenly at the bottle as if he was trying to swallow the whole thing, and the bottle would end up on the barn floor. To begin with, father or mother or Maria would always be there with me. Maria said it looked easy and insisted on having her turn. To my great delight, Paco went wild on her and butted her up the bottom. She never asked to feed him again, then very soon realised that with me, Paco was always gentle, that I could manage him well enough on my own, and after that they just left me to it, which suited me fine. I remember those days playing mother to Paco as the happiest of my young life. Paco followed me everywhere. I'd tie a rope around his neck and take him for walks up to the cork forests. I didn't have to drag him, not that I could have, even if I wanted to. He was far too strong for me. He just seemed to follow along naturally, and he was forever nudging me to remind me he was there, or to remind me it was feeding time again, and the two of us became quite inseparable. Then one morning, after no more than a couple of weeks, it was over. Mother tried to explain to me why it had to end. "You've done a fine job, Antonito," she said, "and your father is very proud of you. And so am I. No one could have given Paco a better start in life, no one. But if he's to become a proper bull, a bull fit for the corrida, then you must handle him no more. No one must. We'd be gentling him too much. He's got to grow up wild. It's what Paco was born for. You know that." I didn't. I had no idea what she was talking about and cared less. All I cared about was Paco, and he was being taken away from me. And besides, she went on, he'll be better off with a cow for a month. Father's picked out just the right one for him. She's got a calf of her own, but she's still got lots of milk to spare, more than enough for Paco, and it might take a day or two for the cow to accept him, but Father will see to that. Paco will be fine, don't you worry. I argued, of course, but I could see it was hopeless. It was Father himself chewing on his bread that lunchtime who had the last say. When it came to the farm and the animals, Father was always had the last say. "From now on, Antonito," he was pointing his knife at me, "you keep away from him, you understand, or else he'll be no use to anyone. Keep away, you hear me now?" It was the end of my world. I cried for hours in my room, and for at least for a couple of days, refused any food I was offered. I made up my mind. I hated Father and Mother, and that I would never speak to them again, and I would run away with Paco as soon as I could. I confided only in Maria. Without her, I honestly think I might have starved myself to death. She took me out to see Paco in the corral with his nurse mother, and I watched him frisking about with his newfound brother and all the other calves, and she assured me that Paco was happy. "That is what you want, isn't it?" she said. "Look at him. Doesn't he look happy to you?" I couldn't deny it. Well then, she said, "if he's happy, then you should be happy too." So it wasn't the end of the world after all. I decided Paco and I wouldn't need to run away. I decided instead that I would see Paco from time to time, but in secret. Not quite in secret, though, for Maria, who was my accomplice, my stooge. We'd wait until the coast was clear, until both Mother and Father were busy in the house or on the other side of the farm, and then we'd steal out to Paco's corral. Maria would keep watch, and I'd stand on the fence and call him over. I was fearful at first that he might have forgotten me. I needn't have worried, though. Whatever he was doing, he'd come trotting over at once and lick my hand. I think he must have liked the salty taste of it. I'd let him suck on it like a teat, and he'd love that. It didn't seem to matter to me that no milk came out. It didn't seem to matter to him that no milk came out. Sucking was enough. and when Paco sucked, he sucked hard. By the time he'd finished, my hand was raw, but I didn't mind. The other calves would be milling around, but I wouldn't let them even have a taste. My hand was for Paco only, and once or twice his nurse mother came wandering over and shook her horns at me, but I always kept on my side of the fence, and she soon lost interest. I'd spent all the hours I could on that fence, just talking to Paco, scratching his head, and having my hand sucked off. Maria was forever fearful of discovery and kept badgering me to come away, but luckily Father and Mother never did find out about our secret meetings, not then, not ever. Paco grew fast, and in his first year he grew horns where there had been none, and often played at fighting with the other yearlings, mock battles, which he always won. Sleek and fast, Father had already picked him out as the finest and noblest bull calf in the herd. Sometimes I would help Father move the herd to fresh pastures. We did it on horseback, with the brown and white cabrestro bullocks in amongst them to gentle them as we drove them. I always rode Chica, the oldest, steadiest mare on the farm. She could have done it all with her eyes closed, I expect. Even then, when the bulls were running all together, she could pick out Paco easily. He would be at the front with his big bull wing, with the big bulls, the 5-year-olds, the giants, and I was so proud of him, but never spoke of him to anyone but Maria. She did warn me over and over again not to become too fond of him. I remember that. All animals have to die, Antonito, she told me, and you'll only be sad. But I was 6 years old, and death meant nothing to me. I gave it a thought. I had some shadowing understanding that it happened, but it was of no interest to me because it happened to old people, old animals. Paco was young, I was young, so I paid my sister's words of warning very little heed. The dawning of the terrible truth was slow at first. I was walking back home from school one day when I came across some bigger boys hanging about by the well in Sausta. A couple of them were playing at something in the street, egged on by the others. It was a game, and I hadn't seen it before, so I stopped to watch. One of the boys, my cousin, Vittorio, was pushing a strange-looking contraption. It had a single wheel and 2 handles, like a wheelbarrow. However, the wheel did not push a barrow, but a crude wooden frame with horns sticking out at the front. It was a simulated bullfight. I could see that now. I'd seen pictures in the village cafe of matadors with their capes and bulls charging them. I'd always thought it was some kind of dance. Vittorio was running at Jose with the bull machine, and Jose was sidestepping neatly at the last moment so that the horns passed by him and charged only into his swirling crimson cape. And each time they all cried, "Ole! Ole!" It was balletic, mesmerising, and I stayed for some while in the background, completely entranced. Then Jose had a stick in his hand, and the chant went up, "Kill the bull! Kill the bull! Stick it in him! Stick it in him!" Suddenly in my mind, it was Paco charging the cape, and the stick was a sword flashing in the sun. And there was blood in the dust, and they were all cheering and laughing and clapping. I turned away and ran all the way home, tears pouring down my cheeks. I would ask Maria, and Maria would tell me it was all right and it was not really what happened at the corrida and that it was just a game or a dance. I found her collecting the eggs. "It's a dancing game, isn't it?" I cried. "They don't really kill the bulls. Tell me they don't." I told her everything I'd seen, and she kissed away my tears and did her very best to reassure me. "It's all right, Antonito," she said. "Like you say, it's a game, a dancing game." "And will Paco have to play it?" I asked. "I expect so," she said. "But anyway, he won't know much about it. Animals don't think like we do, Antonito. Animals are animals. People are people." I asked her again and again, but she became impatient with me and told me not to be so silly. So I shouted at her and said she was the silly one, not me. "A silly cow," I called her. And at that she mooed at me and charged me, and I charged her back. In the scuffle, we broke a lot of eggs. I remember Mother was furious with us both, but I went to bed reassured and unworried. We'd always believed what we want to believe.